Kole ngambulo luku. With whatever we do. Jioni safu nola. With whatever we do. Hale yide munyu skula. Nyepamne nekudlukula. Nyepangiragala gena. Nyepamne nekudlukula. Ibuloke nongoto nibeti sola. Ibuloke dato nibetoto.
Bigi Congo.
Lamin.
Na?
Lamin te jibe no te nyame Lamin.
Kabona wulo kono.
Wulo kono nyita mo Lamin.
Pabilenki.
Muna ngata afamole.
Haina.
Ngata. Ngoto le. Fabrama.
Mingi. Baba nyola.
Ngoto le Fabrama.
Namu jumala kan kuma diten.
Fabrama.
Jumala mu.
Ndele bare muso.
Nunda mbara. Jamani mbere.
Alindo ko.
Jamani.
Bari ngoto man kontande.
Bari jamani fana na mundu wa kontan.
Ngoto minaka ngala min de fom filitala. Lamin jibe nori nyala.
Lamin ila siran sama ne benki. Yala so tol sayni no ko ngol ko momo.
Ngoto.
Nam.
Itedinte yalo ne Lamin hakilo diata bake karamngoto. Anu santeng ministry ko di ngole si suko na amanke ko do holiday
si bitun
bagona de
ala ni ko kede namo balo
ala ni na ko na karta bulo be dam ala ni je
ngoto
nam
ngoto mon kontan fere
jamani mu ne keda
ifika Lamin ki wulo ko no nyintay mon ko do fete malo Lamin nyanta sila la be la moy kala karango
jamani karamol be soron ne ko fasita wulo ko nako
karamol ma soron ni ko karamol soron da amanke ko holiday lem ngoto dindi ngo nyanta sila la ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontaan andamande
alla nyin kombo courant adanda la kombo len do la jankara mol soron do kamen courant ma ra do la kombo e ko ndol fanena kara mol soron je kara mol soron Lamin ada lo nyino la man tara fe na sokon ala mu nekela
am Lamin ite foyde malon ko lesinol be ke kar radio to
nga fine
e ko nyani mo Lamin
nga fine
ya mu na fonye
bi kabin mina kan tambita nteri maning Fatu ndambite la sukol ala diningol bebe siri be la moyka
faru dan so am fana tambira jele ni subala la ngaje diningol be jet talanta nen kili waro e be seri jelet
sa Lamin farante ku kili ko keno la ba Lamin bita ka wulo ko no nyinta mo Lamin
amandara fenela
ite dine ko di man si yakaru lesino la moy radio to e balon na
mu ne ka ke afonde ba nyaara ni alon
telentel jikot
afonde ba mu ne be ke
ite balon tel be jikritel ni man karambe ku kele yaaje nata karana mbasa mala ya itarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide nara yede ni sonka bay ko Lamin manyata la wulo ko aru karam wolbe so da fa ñembe
ko to wole nati bawo ngalle ni Lamin kuntala kombo courant o ka fa me kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e sisu ko no bari ni ko e sisu ko no be karangol di ke la radio ni telel to hani tele masoto to nyaay man tele soto la bongo bar radio be bulen ko to batiri sanga ay si ay alamo
sa do kala nyaadi
ko ta o bulaji
ado kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abe wala moy la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele
ti talle be radio ko men ka karande
ile subjectol baby jele baby jele
wala nanga chocho moy fa dan so wolya ngombe tambi kana ngadi ni wolde be ikadum bungo de ko kada ma
asototal de
Lamin mala be karawala de
bari
laftalal ideal on ko inde every year second wala fourth
muna ni ko de ko folle sinila mba ndele sinilo ne ba
mbasa mba foke en koto wole fango yen wulindi yalo famo keta bat yin fana bulata ko ko me yen nati jambi Lamin nyanta karana ntel be jiko be nyineka ya bulay kara wulo kana ta kilar ya bambalo yo be bulaje koto dindi ngoy si ayala lesino la moy radio
wala ka munda karam mo man soro Lamin nyana kara si so na radio
la sila le ayala lesino
dal ko korno ko smalo
kilar ya
be ngala ko momo sa mi do ni ko no kera
mengi bruzo
ndebe ko do la da barro sa no radio ba no bari woro radio ni abe jele ba do ngamra do man dembe buljan dala nyara nyar wo ko fendi mo la Lamin tayra barro sa
bara te ku folo ajibe nori nya labi mete ku
teku
bari ko do famo ke
imagine nani nyambol si zol le keje kisiki man si zol no le kafun ka nyoma bari nyambu kilo ni manya na kafindi ni nambe ko zol la ga
ngalle limbeta de be nyambo do dilanna
nyara ni ko rin fennat nyara nata
bari famo ke da
ngata bungono tammi bungono nyara ngando ko fele ko ke baru nganda ni pelo landi jak
iyo awa dar la
bungono bismillah bisu diara
pendulala yefungo tanka sina dolu tanka korota korota
Hello viewers and listeners, my name is Jere Bajo. I'm here to give a lesson on social and environmental studies in the upper basic level. Now, in the last class, I gave you an assignment. The lesson was traditional music, songs, proverbs, dance, etc. Now, the assignment was, I gave you a diagram which has the picture of musical instruments which are labeled A, B, C, and D. Now use that diagram to answer question 1, 2, 3. Here are the questions. Which of the musical instruments above is common to all ethnic groups? Look at the diagram carefully or properly. Now, in this question, the answer will be C, which is drum. Almost all ethnic groups use drums as their musical instrument, which is labeled letter C. Question number 2. Name the musical instrument. Name the musical instrument labeled A and B. A and B. The musical instruments level A is called halam. It is called halam, which is used by the Wolof ethnic group. Now, the musical instrument level B is called bolong batu. This bolong batu is used by the Mandinkas. It can also be used by other ethnic groups as well. Now the last question, the third question is, name one ethnic group that used the musical instrument label D. If you look at the picture, the musical instrument label D is used by that is Fulas. The Fulas use the musical instrument label D. Now, our lesson today will be the Gambia's early contact with the wider world. In other words, this is the coming of Europeans to Africa. The coming of Europeans to Africa. Now, after the trade between West Africa and North Africa was established, what was the name of this trade? This trade was the Trans-Saharan trade. The Trans-Saharan trade. This trade made West Africa very famous. And as a result, West Africa becomes very much popular for its gold and slave. As a result of the fame of West Africa in terms of its gold and slave, many Europeans started to visit Africa. That is, the contact between Europe and Africa started in around 15 century. The Europeans began exploring Africa by around 1456. That is to go around in order to discover what is in Africa. The Portuguese were the first to come. The Portuguese were the first to come, or were the first to explore by navigating the coast of Africa. The Portuguese exploration was invented by the then Prince of Portugal called Prince Henry. He was also known as Henry the Navigator, where he set up a school called the School of Navigation, where he trained some men and sent them to explore Africa. In around 1455, Venetian Alviso di Cadamosto sailed from Portugal to the coast of Africa and brought 3 caravels or vessels into the navigable River Gambia. Because River Gambia was navigable, Alviso and his men were able to explore by using River Gambia as a route during the course of their exploration. Now, during this period, West Africa, like I said before, was famous for its gold and slave. Gold and slave these were the major things, although there were other goods as well. But gold and slaves were the major goods that makes West Africa very famous, or that made people interested of West Africa, because they were the most valuable exports. Therefore, the coming of Europeans to Africa was based or linked to human and material. The human there is the slaves, that is the exportation of slaves to the New World, and also the material resource will be gold. Now, what were the reasons for Europeans' exploration in Africa? What were some of the reasons for their exploration in Africa? Or reasons for Europeans coming to Africa? Basically, there were 5 major reasons for Europeans coming to Africa. One of these reasons was to explore. To explore was one of the reasons for the coming of Europeans to Africa. This was to go through Africa in order to discover, that is to know the unknown land of Africa. Because Africa was unknown to them. They did not know the continent. They heard about Africa. So this is why they come to explore in order to gather more information or to know about Africa. And this exploration was very much important to the Europeans, or it becomes very useful to them, because the information gathered during the exploration were used by the missionaries, which was also one of the reasons. And even during colonization, those informations were very much important to them, because they did not know this place. So how can they be successful in conquering the place? By colonizing. they must get the information about Africa. So exploration gave them those informations. And the other one is, number 2, is to trade. That is to trade with Africans in terms of goods. That was the first start. The trade first started in the exchange of goods. Like I said, the most valuable goods in Africa were gold and slaves. Likewise, there were other goods coming from Europe as well, which they were exchanging with Africans. Among those goods we have, they came along with goods like beads, were brought by Europeans. They also brought iron bars. They brought perfumes. They also came with gun and gunpowder. These were some of the goods, or among the goods, that they were exchanging with Africans, with their gold and slaves. And also you have the likes of hides. You also have wax, gum. These were also part of some of the goods that were coming from Africa. Now, along the line, the trade got expanded. The trade got expanded. And this was when the slave trade came in. The slave trade was later introduced. There was a need for high labor force on the plantations in the Americas. This is why the Europeans started exporting slaves from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. Now their third reason of coming to Africa was to spread Christianity. That is to introduce their religions to the people. Which religion? The religion of Christianity. Like I said, these people came as missionaries, where they started preaching in the soil of Africa, and they built schools, churches, where they were teaching people about the Christianity. And along the line, Western education was also encouraged, because the Bible, which was their scripture, or which is their scripture, is written in those languages. So as a result, for people to be able to read and understand the Bible, they must be introduced to Western education first. So this is why they encourage Western education. And the fourth one was to colonize. This was when they started to have colonies in Africa. That is to extend their political control over Africa. And in West Africa, for instance, the British were here to colonize, or they had colonies in Africa, in West Africa in particular. The French also were here, who were rivals to the British. And you also have the Portuguese as well. For example, this was the period when the British were able to colonize the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Ghana as well. And the French were able to colonize Senegal. Likewise, the Portuguese also were able to get their colonies, such as Guinea-Bissau. Good. Now, the fifth one was Scramble for and Partition of Africa. That is the rush and division of Africa among the interested European powers. This led to the famous Berlin West African Conference of 1884 to 1885, when the European powers were summoned in order to divide Africa among themselves to avoid conflict, because they were all interested in Africa. So as they were rushing, there must be, or there might be, conflict. So as a result, Africa was petitioned, and during this petition, they were represented by their people, the people that they sent to come and represent their various countries. Now, if you look at these reasons for their coming, we can categorize them into three main categories. These 5 reasons can be categorized under 3 categories. That is social, political, and economic. So as a result, the European coming to Africa was based on social, political, and economic reasons. The social reasons were, that is, to expand their social life. Example, their way of worship, that is, introduction of Christianity. And the political reason was to extend their political control, that is, to colonize. Likewise, the economic reason was the trade. Now let's look at some of the early explorers to Africa. The explorers, the year of exploration, and the place that they adventured. That means the place that they visited. We are starting with the Portuguese explorers and traders. One of them was Alvisto de Cadamosto, who came in 1455 and 1456. And the place of adventure was the Gambia. We have the likes of Diego Gomez. Diego Gomez came in 1458 and 1460. And the place of adventure was the Gambia. We also have Diego Cam, who came in 1484. And the place of adventure, again, the Gambia. We have Ferdinand Magellan, who came in 1519 and 1522. And Ferdinand Magellan went around the world. This was when people were thinking that the earth was flat. Magellan went on his famous voyage to prove that the earth was not flat, but instead it was spherical. And we have the likes of Christopher Colombo, who came in 1492, 1493, and 1495. And his place of adventure was Northern America. Now the English explorers as well. The English explorers and traders. The explorer, the year of adventure, and the place of adventure. We have William Hawkins as an English explorer who came in 1530 and 1532. And the place of adventure was the Gambia. George Thompson also came, that is in 1618, and he adventured the Gambia and East Africa as well. Richard Jobson also came in 1620 and 1623. His place of adventure was in the Gambia and Ethiopia. Captain Steeves, 1723, and the Gambia, his place of adventure. We have Major Hopton, who was also 1790, and the place was the Gambia. And the most famous among the British explorers to the Gambia was Mungo Park. Mungo Park came in 1795 and 1805. And his place of adventure was the Gambia, Senegal, etc. Now his obelisk is found in the Gambia in Same Karantaba Tenda. Same Karantaba Tenda in Sahara, that is Central River region. This is why I said the most famous English explorer in the Gambia. Now, what are the effects of European trade in Africa? One of the effects of European trade in Africa was, one, the direction of the trade was changed from Sahara to the coast. I repeat, one of the effects of the trade was the direction of the trade was changed from Sahara to the coast. Because before they are coming, West Africa was trading with the Arabs of North Africa. So during that time, they were using the Sahara Desert. But like I said earlier on, during this European trade with Africans, they were using the coast to transport their goods to Europe. That means the good that they were able to get in Africa. So as a result, the direction changes from Sahara to the coast. Two, the standard of living of people improved. How was it improved? Because of the goods brought by the Europeans. The goods that the Europeans brought to Africa uplifted the living standard. For example, the iron bars. This was used by our local industries. Example, the smiths, the blacksmiths, to make tools out of this, which they also sell to people. So it means their living standard was uplifted. Three, iron and brass imported promote local industries. Like I said, these iron and brass led to the growth of local industries, like the smith industries, where they were making tools. Among these tools were simple farm tools like hoe, cutlass, and the likes of an axe. Number four, the new varieties of crops were also introduced. For example, groundnut, maize, mango, guava, and the likes. Those were some of the goods that the Europeans came along with, and they were introduced in Africa. Number five, it led to the growth of coastal towns. The towns along the coast were growing as a result of European activities. And number six, the European settlers intermarried with the African, especially the Portuguese, and their children were the half-caste, and they are known in Portuguese as mulattoes. That does the end of the lesson. And here is your assignment. Your assignment is 1. The early explorers to the west coast of Africa came from where? 2. Question number 2A. Who was the first explorer to visit the Gambia? Who was the first explorer to visit the Gambia? And B, in which year did he first arrive in the Gambia? That's your assignment. And I thank you all. Once again, thank you.
Calling ambuloluku with whatever we do. Jioni safu nola with whatever we do. Hale yide munyu skula nyepamne ne kudlukula nyepangiragala gena nyepamne ne kudlukula ibuloke nongoto ni beti sola ibuloke ndato ni betoto
Bigi Congo Lamin
Na?
Lamin te jibe norin te nyame Lamin
Kama na wulo kono.
Wulo kono nyinte mo Lamin
Pabilenki.
Muna ngata afamole
Haina.
ngata Ngoto le Fabrama
Mingi. Baba nyola.
Ngoto le Fabrama
Namu jumala kan kuma diteng.
Fabrama
Jumala mu.
ndele bare muso
Nunda mana.
kata
Jamani mbere.
Lindo ko
Jamani.
bari ngoto man kontande
Bari jamani fana na ramu wa kontan.
ngoto minaka ngalamin je fon filitala lamin jibe nori nyala
Lamin ile sira sama ne benki. Yala so tol sayni no ko ngol ko momo.
ngoto
Nam.
iterinte yalo ne lamin hakkilo diata bake karambugoto anu santeng ministry ko di ngole si suko na amanke ko do holiday
Si bitun.
Bagona de nga.
ala ni ko kede namo balo
Ala ni na ko na karta bulo be dam ala ni je.
ngoto
Nam.
ngoto mon kontan feren
Jamani mu ne keda.
ifike lamin ki wulo ko no nyintay mon ko do fete malo lamin nyande sila la be la moy kala karango
Jamani karamol be soron ne ko fasi ta wulo ko nako.
Baba.
karambu wol ma ko ni ko karambu wol soro nda amanke comme holiday lem ngoto dindi wo nyanta sila la ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontan andamande
Allah nyin kombo kurang ada ndalo kombo ndo la jankara mol soron ndoro kamen kurang ma ra lo kombo e ko ndol fanena kara mol soron je kara mol soron lamin ada lo nyino la man tara fena sokon ala mu nekela
lamin ite foyde malo ko lesinol be ke kar radio to
Nga fine.
e ko nyani mo lamin
Nga fine.
ya mu na fonye
bi kabin mina kan tambita nteri maning fatu
ha
tambite la sukala ala dinngol bebe siri be la moy ka
faru dan so am fana tambira jele ni subala la ngaje dinni ngol be jet talanta nen kili warol e be serin jelet
sa lamin farante ku kili wo ke no la ba lamin bita ka wulo ko no nyin tay mo alami
aman dara fenela
ite dine ko ni man si yakari lesinol la moy radio to e balon na
mu nekake afonde ma nyara ni alon
kelentel jikot
afonde ma mu be ke
ite balontel be cikritel ni man karambe ku kele yaje nata karana mbasa mala ya etarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide na rajede ni sonka bay ko lamin ma ñata la wulo ko kara mo be so da fa ne membe
ko to wole nati bawo ngalle ni lamin kuntala kombo courant o ka fa me kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e sisu ko no bari ni ko e sisu ko no be karangol dike la radio lin telel to hani tele maso to nyaay man tele soto da bungo bar radio be bulen ko to batiri sanga ay si ay alama
sa do kala nyaadi
ko ta o bulaji
ado kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abe wala mo la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele
ti talle be radio ko men ka karandirol
ile subject ro baby jele Ibe jele.
Wala nanga chocho moy fa danse wala. Ngombe tambi kana ngadi ni wolde be ikadum bungo ko kana mara.
Asototal de.
Lamin mala be kana wala de.
Bari laftalal ideal on go in the every year second wala fourth.
Muna ni ko ndego folle sinila mba ndele sinilo na ba.
Mbasa mba foke nkoto. Wole fango ye mulindi yalo famo keta bat ñu fana bulata ko do me yen nati jambi. Lamin nyanta karana ndel beji ko be nyineka. Ya bulay kara wulo kana ta kilar ya bambalo yo be bulaje nkoto dinni ngoy si ayala le sino la moy rajot
wara ka munda kara mo man soro lamin nyanta kara si so na regular.
La sila le ayala le sino.
Ndale ko korno ko smolo.
Kilar ya
ma be ngala ko momo. Sai mi do ni ko no kera.
Nengi bruzo.
Ndale ko ro la ba rosa no radio ba no bari woro radio ni. Abe jele ko ngamra do man dembe buljan. Dala nyara nyara ro ko fendi mo la. Lamin tayra ba rosa. Bara
te ku folo ajibe nori nya labi tamete ku.
Mingi mun na re.
Teku.
Bari ko do famo ke.
Imagine nani nyambol. Si zol le keje kisigi man si zol. No le kafun ka nyoma bari nyambu kilo ni manya na kafindi. Ni nambe korozor la ga. Ni nambe korozor la ga.
Ngale limbeta de be nyambo do dilanna.
Nyara ni ko rin fennat. Nyara nata.
Bari famo ke da.
Ngata bungono, tabi bungono. Tami bungono. Nyara ngando ko fele. Ko ke baru nganda ni pelo la ndija.
Iyo awe la
bungono bismillah. Bisu diara.
Pendulala. Ye fungo tanka sina dulu tanka. Korota. Korota.
Wonderful viewers and listeners, my name is Bubaba. Today our topic of discussion is basic elements of accounting. Basic elements of accounting. Now we are going to discuss on the meaning of assets and its types. The second one, the meaning of liabilities and its types. And the third one, which is the capital. Now let's look at the meaning of basic elements of accounting. Now before going in for the meaning, let me just simplify this word, the word basic. Basic. Basic means fundamental. Basic means fundamental, and elements mean component. So basic means fundamental, and elements means component. Now let's look at what's the meaning of basic elements of accounting. So the basic elements of accounting are the fundamental components that make up the basic for financial report, such as balance sheets and ledgers, etc. Now these basic elements, this is what the accountant needs. Such financial statements are balance sheet. The word balance sheet, let's look at balance sheet. Balance sheet. Now, when we say balance sheet, basically, we said it's a financial statement that shows the financial position of a business at a particular point in time. Balance sheet shows the financial strength and the weaknesses of what? A business at a particular point in time. It shows all the assets, liabilities, and capital. When I said it includes all the assets, liabilities, and capital, I am referring to the fixed assets, the current assets, the current liabilities, the long-term liabilities, and the owner's equity, which is the capital. That is talking about balance sheet. It says it's a financial position of a business that shows the financial position of a business at a particular point in time. It shows the financial position of a business at a particular point in time. or you can say it's a financial statement that shows the financial position of a business at a particular point in time. That is the meaning of balance sheet. It shows all the assets, liabilities, and capital. And the word ledger here. Ledgers. Now, when we said ledgers, we said is the final destination of all transactions in a subsidiary books, where double entry principles are completed. Now, when I say the word double entry, we said is the act of debiting and crediting two separate accounts at the same time with the same value or amount. Meaning, if you debit, you must have a corresponding credit entry. That is double entry. Now, we move to the first basic elements of accounting. That is, basically in accounting, we have three basic elements. The first basic element is assets. 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 Now, let's look at the meaning of assets. We said these are resources or properties owned by the business or organization which have economic feature benefits over their useful life. And assets can also be categorized into two. You can also call it classification, types, or division. Now, let me elaborate on assets. Now, basically in accounting, when we said assets, we said these are the resources of a business. They are the resources of what? A business, or they are economic resources of a business at a given period of time. Now, why are they called economic resources? Assets. Why are they called economic resources? Because they generate income for the business. Because they are used for day-to-day activities of what? Of a business. Now, example, we have two types of assets in accounting. The first one, we have current assets. The second one, we have what? Fixed assets. Now, the lesson proceed. Let's discuss on each of these types. Now, we have type of assets. The first one, we have current assets. And the second one, we have what? Fixed assets. Now, when we say current assets, we say these are resources or properties of the business that can easily be converted into physical cash, though they are assets the business use in their day-to-day activities. They are also called circulating or floating assets. And examples, we have what? Stock, debtors, cash and bank, prepaid expenses, accrued income, etc. Now, basically, when we said the word current means something that can last for a year, meaning something that can last for a year, and assets is the resources. When we combine these two words together, we'll give you what we call current assets. When we say current assets, they are assets that can last for a period of 1 year. And they are also assets that can easily be converted into physical cash. They are also used for day-to-day activities of what? Of a business. And now let's look at the example here. Remember, they are also known as current assets. They are also known as circulating assets or floating assets because they keep on floating within the business. Now let's look at the example. We have what? Stock, debtors, cash and bank, prepaid expenses, accrued income. And there are two types of stock. We have the opening stock and the closing stock. Now when we say opening stock, we say these are goods that are available at the beginning of the year. And closing stocks, they are goods that are available at the end of the year. In other words, opening stock can also mean opening inventories. And closing stock can also mean what? Closing inventories. So that is current assets. Now let's discuss on the second type of assets, that is the fixed assets. And now when we say fixed asset, we said they are assets that can last for more than a year. And they cannot be converted into physical cash. They cannot be converted into physical cash. And now fixed assets also are not meant for resales. They are not meant for resale. They are also known as non-current assets. They are also known as non-current assets. Remember, in a business, these fixed assets are used for further productions of goods and services. This is why fixed assets in a business, they are not meant for resales. And now let's look at the example of these fixed assets. Now the first example there is plant and machinery. You have motor vehicle, etc. Now remember, we also have the types of fixed assets. Types of fixed assets in accounting, basically, there are two types of fixed assets in accounting. The first one is tangible fixed assets, and the second one is intangible fixed assets. Now, I'm going to explain what do you mean by tangible fixed asset. But before explaining the word tangible fixed asset, I just want to simplify this word tangible. The word tangible. 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 Now when we say the word tangible, it means what? Something touchable. Something touchable. Touchable. T-O-U-C-H. Something touchable. Tangible means something touchable. Now the word fixed is something that can last for more than a year. And asset there is talking about the resources. Now let's look at the meaning of tangible fixed asset. We say these are assets which are fixed in nature. They can be seen, touched, and felt. Meaning, tangible fixed assets are assets that can be seen physically and touched. They are assets that can be seen physically and touched. And let's look at the example here. For tangible fixed asset, we have plant and machinery, motor vehicle, furniture and fittings, etc. And the second type of fixed asset, which is intangible fixed asset. Now, before going into the meaning of intangible fixed assets, let me simplify the word intangible. 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 Intangible, in a simple word, it means untouchable. Untouchable, meaning something untouchable, something that cannot be touched. But in the real accounting context, we said intangible fixed asset. These are assets which are fixed in nature and cannot be seen, touched, and felt. In accounting, intangible fixed assets means assets that you cannot see and touch physically. In other words, they are invisibles. They are assets that are invisibles. Now let's look at the example of intangible fixed assets. The first example there is goodwill, and the second one is patent right, and the third one is copyright, etc. Now when we say the word depreciation, when we say the word depreciation, depreciation. Now we said depreciation is the gradual reduction in the value of tangible fixed asset as a result of wear and tears. Meaning, when fixed asset lose its qualities of its values, it is described as what? Depreciation. And amortization is a gradual reduction in the value of intangible fixed asset. Is the gradual reduction in the value of intangible fixed asset. So these are the two different. The difference between tangible fixed asset and intangible fixed asset. The tangible there is the depreciation, and intangible is the amortization. Amortization. That is the gradual reduction in the value of intangible fixed assets. Now let's move to the second type of, the second basic element of accounting, that is the liabilities. When we say liabilities, we say these are financial obligations of the business which must be paid within a year or more. Within a year or more. And we have two types of liabilities. We have the current or the short-term liabilities, and the second one is non-current or long-term liabilities. Now when we say liabilities, we say they are financial obligations of what? Of a business which must be settled within a year or more. But before moving to the two types of liabilities, in a simple sense, liabilities can be defined in three ways. The first word there is claim. The first word there is claim. C-L-A-I-M-S. Claims. That's the first word. And the second word is the debts. And the third word is obligation. Obligation. Now I'm going to explain these three words. If you are defining liabilities, you can use any of these words. Now, when we say claim, in a simple sense, we said claim is the amount of money requested from the business by an outsider. Is the amount of money requested from the business by an outsider. Example, when a business purchases goods on credit from its suppliers, meaning from its creditors. So in returns, the business needs to pay back that money. So if the creditors requested their money from the business, that's what you call what? Claim. Is the amount of money requested from the business by an outsider. Example, creditors, etc. Now the second word there, that is the debt. When we say the word debt, we said is the amount of money that a business is owing. Example, let's say a business purchase goods on credit from its suppliers, which worth $10,000. So in returns, this is what the business owes to its suppliers or to its creditors. So that is the total amount of money that the business is owing to an outsider. Example, you have creditors. If a business takes loan from the bank, therefore, it can also be what? If business took cash loan from the bank, if the bank requests that amount from the business, it is described as what? A debt. Debt is the amount of money that the business is owing. Now the third word there is obligation. When we say the word obligation, is the amount of money that the business must pay or settle within 1 year or more. Meaning it must be settled. The business must settle its obligation. The business is the amount of money that the business must settle to its outsiders. Meaning if a business owes to its outsiders, they must settle their liabilities. It must be paid and it must be settled. So that's what we call obligation. So basically these are the three keywords. If you are defining liabilities, these are the three keywords you should remember. The first one is claim. The second one is debts. And the third one is obligations. Now let's look at the two types of liabilities. The first one, we have the current liabilities or the short-term liabilities. Now when we say current liabilities, we said these are debts that the business must settle within a year. Meaning they are liabilities that are payable within a short period of time. Short-term liabilities, they are liabilities that are payable within a short period of time. They are also known as current liabilities. Let's look at the examples. The first word there is the creditors, bank overdraft, and accrued expenses. Now, the second type of liabilities, which is the non-current or long-term liabilities. These are debts that are payable by the business for more than a year. Meaning these are financial obligations that must be settled by the business for more than a year. Example, if a bank gives loan to a business for a period of 10 years, meaning the business needs to pay that loan for a period of 10 years. That is classified as a long-term liability. Example, you have loan, you have debenture, etc. Now the third element of accounting, that is the basic elements of accounting, that is the basic elements of accounting, that is the capital or owner's equity. Now, when we said capital, we said this is the total amount of money or resources invested by the owner to start or commence a business. It can only be a liability when the owner decided to withdraw or take it back from the business. After the investment is always have a credit balance. Capital always have what? A credit balance. Now, when we say capital, the word capital, that is the third element of accounting. Now, is the total resources, that is invested by the owner to start a business. Example, Lamin started a business with an amount of 10,000 on 1st of January 2020. So that 10,000 there, is the capital of Lamin. And this is what he started business with. This is what he invested into the business to start a business. So this is what we call capital. And capital always have what? A credit balance. Remember, when we are dealing with the double entry system, now we said capital always have what? A credit balance. Capital always have what? A credit balance. Now we move to the revision questions. Let's look at the revision questions together. Now the first question there is define and state two classifications of each of the following. And letter A, we have assets, and letter B, we have what? Liabilities. In our lesson, we have discussed what is an asset. In our first lesson, we have discussed what is an asset. Assets. Now let's discuss on assets. Now when we said asset, we said these are the resources, or they are the economic resources of what? Of a business. And the classifications is, you have two types of assets. You have the fixed assets and the current assets. Now let's look at number B, liabilities. We said liabilities are financial obligations of a business that must be settled within a year or more. And the classifications, we have the short-term liabilities and the long-term liabilities. And the second question there, explain the basic elements of accounting. Basically, we have three basic elements of accounting, and we have discussed that one in our lesson. Now, the first basic elements of accounting is assets. The second one is liabilities. And the third one is capital. Now, when we said assets, we said they are the economic resources of what? Of a business. They are the economic resources of a business. Why are they called economic resources? Simply because they generate income for the business. They are used for the day-to-day activities of a business. Now, the second basic element, that is liabilities. We say liabilities are financial obligations of a business which must be settled within a year or more. And the third basic element is the capital. Capital is the total resources invested by the owner to start what? A business. Let's move to question 3. An alternative name of capital. As we discussed it in our lesson, an alternative name of capital, meaning another name for capital is owner's equity. It belongs to the owner of what? A business. And the fourth question is, explain the following: fixed assets, current asset, debtors, and creditors. Now, when we said fixed asset, we said they are assets that can last for a longer period of time. They can last for a longer period of time. And letter B, current asset, we said these are assets that can easily be converted into physical cash. And letter C, we have debtors. Debtors, these are individual or businesses that is owing a business. Whilst creditors, they are individual or businesses that a business is owing. Question number 5, state 2 classification of fixed assets and give 3 examples of each. Now, when we say state, you have to write something. Now, when we say fixed assets are divided into 2. You have the tangible fixed assets and intangible fixed assets. Now, when we say tangible fixed asset, we say these are assets that can be seen physically and touched. And the examples are plant and machinery, land and building, equipment, etc. The second type of fixed asset is the intangible fixed asset. So these are assets that cannot be seen and touched. They are invisible. Example, we have goodwill, patent right, and copyright, etc. So I'm going to stop here till our next lesson. I thank you.